Hello everybody, welcome. My name is Niclas Huschenbeth and I'm bringing to you the highlights of day 2 of the Grand Chess Tour event in Paris. Day 2 of Rapid Chess today. And before this day, Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura both in the shared lead. So let's start right away with a game of the world champion Magnus Carlsen here against Vachier-Lagrave Topalov, who had not have a great event so far. So let's see what happened here. Carlsen already in the driver's seat. You can see the white king is a little bit open compared to the black king, which feels completely safe. So in this position, Topalov further weakened his king by playing g4. And I think that was a critical mistake. Instead, he should have played queen g2. And objectively speaking, the position should be still okay for white, should be defendable. But let's be honest, in a practical game against a world champion, in a rapid game, that's not going to be easy either. But after g4, probably Topalov was hoping to exchange queens here. For example, let's say black plays a move like queen h3 and queen g2, queen h4, queen h2, and it looks like at first sight that black cannot escape the queen trade. But Carlsen played a really nice move here. He played the queen all the way back to h8. What's the point? If now white was to play queen h2, black can react with knight h7 and really avoid altogether the queen exchange. Topalov didn't play queen h2 quite yet. He first played knight b5, but Carlsen just continued with his plan to seize the initiative on the king side, knight h7, opening up possibilities for the minor piece to go to g5 and exploit the fact that the dark squares around the white king are just quite weakened. Now queen h2, rook fb8, making space for the queen. Queen is coming to d8. And now bishop g5, and it turns out the position just plays itself for Carlsen here. Bishop is coming to f4, knight is coming to g5 soon, and it was over very soon here. King f1, queen h8, and indeed already Topalov resigned. Queen h1 is the threat. All the black pieces are participating. White doesn't have any counterplay. It's pretty much a free attack for black. He hasn't even sacrificed a single pawn so far. And Topalov just said, okay, well, I'm not going to save this position. I'm just gonna give up here. So quite a nice start for Carlsen in day 2 of the Paris event. Let's go to another game here from round 6. This is a game between Caruana and Vachier-Lagrave. Caruana had sacrificed an exchange but obtained a nice knight on f5 and a protected passed pawn on d5. The position remains unclear. Here, however, Caruana made a mistake. He should have played a move like queen g3, eyeing on his pawn on e5, and the position remains complicated and all 3 results are possible. Instead, Caruana played rook to g1, and this is a mistake. If you want to right now, you could stop the video and try to figure out how to refute this move. Where's the tactic here that just demolishes white's position? Alright, do you get it? It's quite simple actually. You just have to spot it. This move, knight to h3, making use of the fact if white takes, there's knight f2, followed by queen takes g1, checkmate. But still, there's the threat, knight f2, which is a huge threat. And Caruana didn't have anything better but to give up this exchange. But now he's down 2 exchanges, and the game was soon over in a few moves. And Vachier-Lagrave took this one home. Off we go to round number 7, once again with a game of Fabiano Caruana. And this was a really interesting game, I think. A lot of tactical motives in this one. Here, Aronian played queen b3. And Caruana, he's known to be one of the best tacticians in the world, so strong on calculating variations, but today was just not his day, it seems like. Because, let's put it like this, a normal Caruana, a Caruana in normal shape, would have found rook takes c5, no doubt about it. The point is, white cannot take the rook on f7, that would run to rook c1. Now obviously rook takes c1 is easily refuted by black, just giving checkmate. Probably what Caruana had missed is that after rook g1 he can also give checkmate with knight f2, king g2, queen g5 check, and there it is on g1 checkmate. So queen b3 was just a blunder by Aronian, or a bluff. Well, more so a blunder, I would guess, because rook takes c5 just picks up this pawn. Black is just clearly better. So Caruana missed this chance. He played rook f6, and now queen b5, and here he played rook fc6, offering the exchange. He just wanted to get rid of this bishop on e4 so badly. But this has a major flaw to it. Instead, he should have played a move like knight f4, and black remains in the game, certainly. The problem with rook fc6 is that after bishop takes, rook takes, now c takes b6 doesn't work because of rook c1 once again, but queen takes b6 would have been possible, but Aronian missed this one as well. The point is that here, in this variation, black is able to block the pawn for now, but the important move to c is rook g6, and the rook is coming to c6, then to c8, and there's nothing black can do about it. White is winning. Instead, in this position, Aronian played rook f1, and here Caruana made another inaccuracy, took on c5 with the rook, allowing in the white queen. Instead, he should have just moved the king out of the way for now, and still having chances here to hold on. But after rook takes c5, the queen is coming in, and white is also having threats against the white king, as well as obviously being exchanged up, and Aronian went on to win this game. Tactics also happened in this game between Fressinet and Vladimir Kramnik. White to move played the move knight e3, which turned out to be a mistake. Instead, he should have played a very nice prophylactic move, king g1, just to move this king out of the b8 h2 diagonal. Why is that, you might ask? Well, we'll find out in a moment. After knight e3, black took on e4 and now took on h3. And that's possible because after g takes, black can take on f3 as well. Now we see why the king should have moved out of the way, because queen takes f3 fails to the discovered check, e4 attacking the queen as well as the king, and white loses the queen. So obviously Fressinet couldn't take the rook on f3, but that just left him down a pawn. It's not just any pawn, it's a pawn in front of their own king. Black has active rooks, bishop pair is up a pawn. That's not an easy task to convert for a player like Vladimir Kramnik. He went on to win effortlessly. Off we go to the 8th round. And we're gonna see a game between Hikaru Nakamura and Levon Aronian. Nakamura had capitalized on a small advantage, had won a pawn, and arrived in this rook endgame. Rook endgames, you know, they're always a little bit tricky. So let's spend some time on this one and see what is going on. After king a6, Nakamura played rook e7, which is fine, but I think maybe rook e8 would have been an easier way to continue. Threatening f6, followed by g7, so black has to react to this. Best way is rook c7, if rook g1, that just opens up the way for the king to come over, and that's it. The counterplay for black is way too slow. So rook c7, now just king b4, improving the king position. Now rook f8, preparing f6, and then f6, and this is actually similar to the game, but just a way better version, because the white king is just able to right away come over and support the pawn g7, and black once again is way too slow with his counterplay. That was one option. Rook e7 is fine, but here after rook c5, I believe, I'm pretty sure actually, that rook takes g7 is a mistake and black is able to equalize. Instead here, white should have played rook f7. If now b5, Certainly there are many ways to continue here, but it seems that even a4 is possible to exchange this pair of pawns and then just to bring over the king. The point is here that the rook cannot cut off the white king as well as keep an eye on the pawn on f5. So let me take off all these arrows. Black has to move something here anyway. Also, there's the threat of rook b7 in position right now. So let's just say rook e5, then king c4. The king is coming, king d4. And now, well, I mean, if the rook moves here and king e4 just protects this pawn, white takes on g7 the next move. But if king d6, then f6 just wins the game. G takes f6, rook takes f6. Rook e6 and g7, and this pawn is going to queen, and that's it. After rook takes g7, however, rook takes f5. It looks very good for white indeed here, but b5, strong move by Aronian. Now king c3, and this is the critical moment. Here Aronian played rook g4 to cut off the white king from the 4th rank, but it's too slow. King b6 was necessary. King b6 and running over. And it might be surprising, but this works for black. The point is that here black can play king e6, also attacking the rook on f7. And, well, what can white do? The pawn endgame is a draw right away. Here, king g8. White doesn't have a waiting move, and after king g6, black just plays b4, and white better takes this pawn, otherwise white loses, and this is a stalemate. And if the rook on f7 moves, then black also just moves the rook. The king blocks the white king, and there's no way for white to make any progress. If white takes on b5, obviously black takes on g7, and this pawn on a3 will not cause any danger for black. But Aronian missed this. He played rook g4, and now the king just coming. The black counterplay just way too slow. King e4, here rook a7 check. Of course, not just giving up the pawn on a3. King f5, not threatening to go king f6. So Aronian chose to sacrifice the rook right here, but this is just way too slow. King e4, and Aronian resigned because b4, king d3, b3, king c3 is just so simple for white. So, nice endgame win for Nakamura, even though it looks like Aronian could have saved himself, but of course in a rapid game, not easy to do. Let's see how the other leader, Magnus Carlsen, was doing. He was playing against his second, Laurent Fressinet, and here after king d7, Frissain decided to take on c6, otherwise he would be just down a pawn without any compensation really. So we arrive in this position, which is quite interesting. Material-wise, it's okay for white. He has two minor pieces against black's rook and pawn, but for one, well, this pawn is a little bit weak. In general, the pawn structure is a little bit destroyed on the king side, but more importantly for black is the active king, which much more active, obviously, than the white king still on g1. But Fressinet did a good job defending here and making it as difficult as possible for black. Rook g8, a nice move to put a king an even worse square. Here, king h1, and now king c3, very natural, but instead rook c8 would have been better to threaten to enter rook c2. And if now white plays knight b3 and we actually arrive in a similar position than what we're going to see in the game, the difference is that the rook this time is on c7 instead of b8. And what's different about that is that white can never play b5 because obviously the knight on c5 would be hanging. So for you guys to understand what I'm talking about, let's just see the game real quick, what happened here. The knight also ends up on c5, but now black has to place the rook on b8, which is just a little bit worse than on c7 obviously. And white is able to push the pawns forward, and Fressinet actually managed to exchange these two pawns against the pawns on b7 and a6, which is definitely an accomplishment because The rook is a long-range piece. That means it likes to play on both sides of the board, whereas, well, the bishop is a long-range piece, but the knight is not. So knight and bishop work, or often work better together on one side of the board, or at least when it comes to defense. Definitely white only wants to defend on the king side, especially because his king is already there. His king is far away from the queen side. So let's fast forward. Carlsen pressed on. He won another pawn, up 2 pawns, or 2 pawns and the rook against the minor pieces. And here in this position, he actually could have taken a third pawn, but he didn't. King takes h2 was possible, and I think it would have been a good way to continue. I cannot imagine really that white is going to hold this. Black has 3 pawns and a rook. This should win after some more precision by black. Instead, Carlsen played e5, which is also fine. But after bishop c4, he made a mistake. Here, Carlsen should have played e4 check. King has to go to e2, and now force the king to the first rank, and now take on h2. Knight takes f5, king g2, and the king on e1 is stuck on the first rank, and white will just watch how black's going to push the h pawn. Pretty much, this is over, guys. Black's going to win this one. So Carlsen missed his chance, and after rook b2, it looks quite different. Now he also wins the pawn on f4, but look at this position compared to what we just had. Now suddenly all the white pieces are coordinated, and most importantly, the white king is much better placed on g3. Suddenly the black king is kind of cut off and would rather be somewhere else, like on g5, right? So this turned out well for white, and indeed Fressinet was able to hold this, and the game ended in a draw. So missed chance for Magnus Carlsen. Let's go to round number 9, and we're going to start off with this game, Vachier-Lagrave against Giri, and I want to show this because here Vachier-Lagrave played what I consider to be the move of the tournament. Looks like a very innocent position, right? Some kind of Roy Lopez. Not much has happened. You would expect a move like h3, but Vachier-Lagrave unleashed rook to g1. Great move. He's just saying, I'm going to play g4, I'm going to play g5, I'm going to checkmate you. What are you going to do against it? And Giri couldn't do anything better but to retreat with the queen and saying, well, go for it, and I'm trying to defend, right? Instead of queen d8, when really white is able to execute his plan, black should play h5 to stop g4. Not an easy move to make because clearly black is weakening the square on g5. But on the other hand, white has given up the right to castle, so it's kind of a trade-off, and black should be okay. In the game of the rook g1, queen d8, white is able to push, and here Giri made a good practical decision to give up the pawn to kind of slow down the white attack. And indeed, Giri was able to defend, create counter chance against the white king, and after a wild game, it ended in a perpetual. But I didn't want to spend too much time on this game. I rather want to look at the games of the leaders, Carlsen and Nakamura. Carlsen, first of all, played against Vladimir Kramnik, and this was a typical Carlsen game. Out of the opening, he didn't have much, maybe a tiny edge, if anything, but then he slowly improved, increased his chances, increased his advantage. And we arrive in this endgame, and now after bishop b7, he plays this cute little tactic, knight d5, discovered attack on the rook, and then there's the family fork on f6. King goes to g7, and knight takes d7, and suddenly all the black pieces are hanging, right? And it's a miracle actually that black is still able to play on, but rook e7 is possible. I'm sure Kramnik saw this whole variation also and probably thought he can defend this, and it should be defendable, but not easy, right? That's always the problem. Carlsen is so good in winning these positions where he's slightly better and where his opponents at some point go wrong. Okay, first of all, why is rook takes b7 not possible? Well, it is possible, but b4, this pawn leads to white needs to give up the knight. knight c5 would just lose the game right away here because the knight is not able to catch this pawn. Black is going to win. So white needs to take the pawn on b4, and then we have a technical 3 against 2 rook endgame, which is a draw. So instead of taking on b7, Carlsen played knight b8, and is also winning the pawn on b5. And let's fast forward a little bit here to a critical moment. Here after king g3, Kramnik played rook c7, and I think that was a crucial mistake. He should have played rook b4. And I believe black should be able to hold here. For example, bishop c8, knight e5, bishop f5. Of course, not easy, and white can try for a long time, but I think with best play, black should be able to hold. However, after rook c7, allowing this rook exchange, now I believe this minor piece in game is just lost, and Carlsen converted without great effort. We can just go through the last moves here. First, you get rid of the bishop on f1, and then just bring the king to g5, put the pawns on dark squares, and prepare f5, and that is happening right here. The pawn endgame is winning for white, so black cannot take, and now here black already resigned because the h5 pawn is falling, and then white just has 2 connected passed pawns. We'll just push them. It's so easy, and Kramnik didn't want to see this anymore. So nice endgame win by Carlsen. Let's go to the game of the other leader. He was playing against Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces here, Hikaru Nakamura. Caruana didn't have a great day, 0 out of 3. But here it's looking good for him. He's up a pawn, nice connected pawns here. And after rook e7, he had a big chance here. He played c6, which looks so natural and good. And it is a good move, but even better was rook d6. The point is that black cannot take. Here suddenly this pawn is unstoppable. Rook d7 runs into rook c7, and rook e8 just is answered by d7 followed by knight e6. So rook d6 would have been a good move followed by c6, and also introducing ideas like knight e6 would have been a tremendous move to play here. After c6, things are looking also good for white, but it's really not that clear. Rook c7, especially because, well, this bishop on h3 is out of play. Well, you can say the same thing about the bishop on h5, but it's just these pieces are a little bit awkward right now. Here, Caruana played knight h7. Rook d7 was another option. Quite interesting line here. Bishop e7 is stopping the a8 queen. Now rook c8, rook d6, and probably this is why Caruana didn't play this, because now black seems like he's taking control, but here rook h8 is a really sweet move to threaten rook h7 followed by rook f7 checkmate. And black has to go for something like rook d4, rook h7, and now rook takes f4, rook takes e7, some crazy tactics here. King takes e7 is answered by a d8 queen or knight e6. I don't think it makes a difference, and white is going to win the rook. So instead of king takes e7, black should play rook d4. Now rook e8, rook takes d7, knight e4 check, and after a very forced line here, long line, takes d3, it seems like white is having some good chances to convert this and win this. Alright, let's see what happened in the game here. Knight h7 was played, king g7. By the way, if black takes this one, of course, white is going to push and winning the exchange. So king g7, now rook d7, good choice. Takes, d8 queen is the threat, so bishop e7 is forced. And now Caruana gave away his advantage with the move rook e1. Rook c7 was needed, threatening d8 queen, so black needs to play bishop d8, rook c8, and black still has some aces up his sleeve here. Rook a2 check, king g3, bishop b6, knight g5, bishop f2 check, and in this variation, to escape a perpetual check, white needs to give up the bishop And we'll see the idea behind it in just a moment. Here, if the bishop takes f4, now king g2, and now this is why white played bishop f1, so that the rook is hanging on f1 now. And black cannot just take on g5 and protect the d8 square, even though that's what he needs to do, certainly. But now the rook is falling on f1, and white is going to queen. Next move is up in exchange, and I believe should have good winning chances once again. But Caruana missed this, and after rook e1, king f7, suddenly there's no way to keep the pawn on d7 anymore. It's just gone. So let's fast forward a little bit to this position. 2 against 2, equal material. It looks like we're heading for a draw here. But now the unbelievable happened. Caruana surprised everybody by playing the move b5, which is a horrible mistake. White had several ways to continue. Maybe king g3 would have been easiest, to just give up this pawn on g5 and then push the b pawn. White is creating enough counterplay, and this should end in a draw. Probably Caruana was just expecting the same after b5, that black was going for rook h1, going for the g pawn. But black has another option here as well, which is the move f4. And suddenly the white king is in a mating net. King h3 was played, and now bishop f3 taking away the g4 square, and there's nothing stopping rook h1 here. White doesn't have any check. The bishop controls everything, and all white could do here was resign, and that's what Caruana did. Quite an unfortunate end for Caruana, and a lucky finish. Quite a lucky finish for Nakamura, who took the point here, turned it around, and ended the day with 3.5 out of 4, and that put him in the lead with 14 out of 18 points. Remember, guys, it was a 2-point scoring system. That means 2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 points for a loss. So Nakamura in first place with 14 out of 18, Carlsen right behind him with 13 out of 18. And tomorrow, on Saturday and on Sunday, we're going to have a total of 18 more Blitz games. And maybe you're asking right now, why is this scoring system? Well, the Blitz games are just normal scoring. That means 1 point for a win, half a point for a loss, and nothing, half a point for a draw, and nothing, 0 points for a loss. So the rapid games were more important for the scoring, which makes sense because rapid chess is a little bit more serious, and well, it also takes longer, right? So tomorrow the action continues with top grandmasters Peter Sweetler and Jan Gustafsson. They're going to sit where I'm sitting right now, so make sure to tune in. I will certainly, and what can I say? I hope you guys enjoyed this summary. Have a good night. Bye. Or a good day, or whatever time it is right now for you. Goodbye.